It's back to school time at the University of California. A look at outgoing President Mark Yudof's legacy and what lies ahead. Rumors abound about what Apple will announce next week, a new iPhone and a new plan for grabbing market share. And the America's Cup making waves. The final races start Saturday after a harsh penalty for Oracle Team USA. Plus, discover the fiery sculptures of Bay Area Burning Man art and how its influence is spreading. Coming up next. Good evening, I'm Thuy Vu. Welcome to This Week in Northern California. Joining me for insight and analysis of the news are Julian Guthrie, San Francisco Chronicle reporter, Kara Swisher, editor of All Things Digital, and Anna Tintakoulis, KQED education reporter. It's that time of the year when students go back to school, but for one top education official, it's time to exit. University of California President Mark Yudof leaves his post this month after 5 years on the job. Under his tenure, the 10-campus system saw tuition nearly double, but he also reformed UC's pension plan and expanded financial aid. Anna, you spent this week reporting on Yudof's impending departure. What do you think his legacy will be?
I really think it depends on who you talk to, and I think that's the interesting part about Yudof is that when you talk to administrators, regents, students, some students, they'll say, you know, he really helped low-income students get access into the UC system through this, it was called a Blue and Gold Opportunity Plan, and so basically families that earned $80,000 and below, you got financial aid to go to any of these institutions. And he also, toward the end, helped middle class students also with kind of a set aside for them as well. And he also did a lot to reform the pension system for the UC employees. So with that, you know, a lot of people said he set the UC on a good trajectory, but then you have, you know, the huge chorus of students who, like you said, a near doubling of tuition going from $5,000 a year to $11,000 a year, and during that time, okaying executive salaries. And so, when you talk about, you know, how do you measure success for a UC president? And if you're ultimately talking about what is impacting students, it's hard to not look at his legacy and see that huge tuition hikes and how he became such a lightning rod of criticism around that. You know, during the Occupy movement, and there was rallies all over the place at UC Berkeley, you know, they called him out as being the top 1%, that he was disconnected, that he had no business being in education and speaking for students, because students just simply didn't feel like, you know, he had their back.
And in fact, students protested against him and demanded his firing at one point. He has definitely made some accomplishments that you talked about earlier, financial aid to greater amounts of students. Did he have any big regrets?
I think maybe one of the big regrets is something that was out of his control, really. I mean, when he entered 5 years ago, the economy was plummeting, and he entered during the worst economic time for higher education, public education in general. So, I mean, I think he does regret having to pull the lever on tuition. But when you talk to him, you know, he lays it out for you that there was really no other option for him to take. They cut in every other possible way, and tuition was the only really thing that they could do to keep the system afloat, or at least not compromising its quality. So,
and what's the sense of, in terms of the next leader of this system? What's being looked for?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because students, when I was doing my reporting, I asked them, you know, what do you think of Mark Yudof? And they say, Mark who?
Really?
So it's interesting to...
And not in a joking manner. They really didn't know who he was.
They really don't know who he is. So I think that speaks to the disconnect. Students are in this bubble. They just want to do their work. They want their degree and they want to leave. And some who are a little bit more active, more politically speaking, they know who the main players are. So I think students are more succinct when you ask them what kind of leader do you want versus what do you think of this leader that you now have. So it's what they talk to me about in wanting a leader is someone who can really identify with students. I mean, the bottom line is they want someone who can mix and mingle, who will come on campus, who will attend athletic events, someone who can be very personable. And with Mark Yudof, you didn't have that, a lot of people said. I mean, he was very much removed, and a lot of people criticize him for not being very forceful in Sacramento, but that wasn't really his style. So I think with the new leader, Janet Napolitano, who's coming on board, I think we will see a little bit more of a fearful or forceful advocate, and maybe lawmakers being a little bit more fearful of what she might bring. She'll bring a lot of clout and a lot of a pull with her.
Well, she definitely has a lot of connections. She used to head Homeland Security. What do you think the challenges will be for her? The educational climate is different. I mean, now there's a greater student to faculty ratio. Online courses are seeing a popularity. Do you think there will be a trend toward that in the UC system?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing she's going to have to do is just sit and listen. And she said that, that she needs to listen to the constituents of the university and press a lot of flesh in Sacramento. But I think the main thing is that she is entering a time where Proposition 30, which was the voter improved measure, is bringing in about $250 million. So this is the first time the UC is actually getting some money. So it's on a better path than it was 5 years ago. And so she'll have to know now what to do with that money, where she wants to channel it. And online education is going to be a huge issue she's going to has to grapple with. Diversity is going to be another one. And also just making the governor know that, no more tuition hikes. And that will be an interesting conversation they'll have, I'm sure.
So Mark Yudof leaves on the 30th of this month, is
Correct.
that right? And then Janet Napolitano starts the day right after.
Right after.
Okay, well, we'll see how it all works out. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Well, speculation, anticipation, and questions as Apple is set to make a major announcement on Tuesday. Among the rumors, updates to the current iPhone 5, new colors, and perhaps even lower-priced phones to grab greater market share. Now, Kara, which of these rumors are likely to pan out, and how do you think it'll affect, Apple's impact?
Well, it's a really important
smartphone
moment for Apple because they've sort of gotten beaten up over the last year in the stock market and elsewhere for not being innovative enough, in the wake of Steve Jobs' death and the takeover by Tim Cook, who's been a very different kind of CEO. But so this is a really important rollout, what they're rolling out. One will be a sort of a jacked up iPhone 5 with a whole bunch of things, including a possible fingerprint sensor, better chip, colors, better camera, things like that.
Better flash?
I'm sorry?
Better
flash, exactly. And then it's champagne color with one of them. I mean, people do care about those things. Right now, you can have white or black.
Sensor? What's the fingerprint?
It's a fingerprint sensor, so that you can do all kinds of. We don't know what all the applications are going to be, but it's like a password.
Well, I think for when you turn on the phone, it senses your fingerprint, and you no longer need to punch in a 4-digit code.
Right, that's going to be a big trend. All those kind of things, all those recognitions, facial recognitions, fingerprint, the eye recognition, and things like that.
What's this thing we're hearing about? Possibly a cheaper phone?
No, it's not possibly.
5C?
They're doing a cheaper phone.
They're doing it,
yes,
okay.
Yeah.
And what price range will that be?
In the 400, well, it depends on where you are. Non-subsidized is different than subsidized countries. But, I mean, I think that pushes more for the rest of the world, a lot of it. They will sell them here, but their market share is pretty good here in the United States of who wants to buy it. But they're moving into China, and they've been moving into China and selling phones. But their phones are too expensive for many, many people, except for the big cities like Shanghai and Beijing.
Because the average smartphone in China is about $200.
Yes, exactly. But they aspire to the iPhone. But it's like $800 right now in China to buy one, and you don't get subsidized the way. It's not the same system here. And so they're looking for a $400 phone that is a cheaper phone that works better with their wireless systems and things like that. And so the people want that phone. They just can't afford it right now. So they're looking for a phone that has more appeal to a broader range of people.
Well, speaking of China, are we going to hear of new deals
Yes.
with China, with Japan? Even?
China, I think that's where everybody's focused. They were already in with two of the big mobile providers, Telecom and Unicom, I think. And now the rumor is, and I think it's correct, that they're going to do a deal with China Mobile, which is the biggest. I think it's 10 times the size of Verizon, 700 million customers. These are huge numbers in China. And Apple has been losing market share there and losing revenues, actually.
And Samsung has been gaining,
Absolutely,
right?
100%.
So that's their primary competitor,
Right.
who they see.
Right, exactly. And so they've got to have an offering to people so they can keep up their market share and improve it.
And Microsoft is trying to catch up because it announced that recent deal with
Yes,
Nokia.
it did. Yes, it did. But they're not catching up. But okay.
So they would like
They
to.
announced it.
So,
Yay.
Carol, what do you think? Bigger picture,
Right.
Apple, creativity, the future without, the iconic Steve Jobs. There's been a lot of debate
Sure.
about how well Apple will do. What would you say?
Well, all the other people are still there. I mean, it wasn't, I always say it wasn't like he was Willy Wonka and they were the Oompa Loompas. These are very talented executives. Johnny Ive is still there and he's been in charge of the software. They're going to get a software update of iOS 7. So, we'll see if they can really create. Jobs sort of had a reality distortion field around announcements, and Tim is just not quite as good at that. So the question will come down to products that people want to buy, and I think going into a cheaper phone is long in coming and probably should have happened sooner. But Jobs was always opposed to that in many ways.
But it's still not the same thing as a brand new product, right?
Right.
I mean, with Apple under Steve Jobs, we saw a decade where the iPad came out,
Right.
the iPod came out, the iPhone
Right.
came out.
Right.
It was just such an incredible era of innovation. Do you
Absolutely.
think what happens next Tuesday would be enough to
No.
quell criticism that, boy, innovation is
No,
over?
now it's sort of, it's not over, but boy, you've gotten some great stuff, haven't you, in a very short time period. I think the question is that, barring a magic unicorn that is your best friend, I mean, what are they going to create? What is anybody going to create? Because of so much innovation that's happened in this very short time. And so I think the expectations are high for Apple. And so they haven't, I think the watch is going to be something people are going to be looking at. That's not coming out this time.
smartwatch?
That's supposedly not coming out. The smartwatch.
What about Apple TV? Will they make any announcements
They already have
about
Apple
that?
TV. Yes, they're probably going to improve the software in the Apple TV, but it's not going to be a new Apple TV. They've got one of the things that the software might be doing now is that if you take your phone to someone's house that has an Apple TV, you can stream it onto their system without signing in or signing them off. And that's to meet the Chromecast, which is Google's offering where you stick it in the thing and can push anything to the television. So,
Why won't they make a bigger screen? I understand that
Right.
this phone will probably go from 4 inches to 4.3, which is
Yes.
minuscule. It's almost not noticeable. Why not a 5-inch screen?
They have reasons, power reasons, all kinds of. They give lots of reasons when they talk about it, and Tim Cook's talked about that why they don't do it. But I think that's a good question. I mean, Apple's always marched to its own drummer, its own look. It's a verticalized system, and so I think that it's very hard for them to want to offer all kinds of different things. I think they'll get there eventually, but they feel like they have the mini iPad, the larger iPad, the iPhone, and that sort of covers it. Now, Samsung has 90 different things. They have one that looks like a waffle. They got one that's bigger. They've got, stuff like that. So I think the question is, this is a single company that wants to keep a very strict design principle, which has worked very well for them. And now the others are catching up rather quickly, and that's always been their challenge, and we'll see what happens.
What do you think is the biggest challenge for Apple right now? For obviously it wants to enter the Chinese market, but it's never going to really offer a $200 phone. I don't think it can afford to.
Yes, it can. Certainly, absolutely. I think this one will be a really interesting, and then eventually those prices will come down if they sell 40 million of them. Sure.
Well, they were successful in diversifying with the iPad,
Right,
and the iPod,
exactly. And I
and
think
the Touch.
they've got to really keep up market share. The thing is, they make most of the money. Like, as for all we talk about Google's Android, it's hardly profitable compared to what Apple pulls in a lion's share of the profits. And I think that's really where they do. They make most of the money. They have smaller and smaller amounts of share, but they still continue to make a lot of the money in this market. But it's more than that. It's about services and software. That's where I think they really need to innovate. iTunes is just awful. I'll admit it. And so they really have to innovate they don't do any social. The iPhone's not very social. It has social elements from everybody else, but that's the kind of thing I see as being innovative.
And what about the mapping?
Services. Mapping.
Are they coming back with mapping after
Well,
that huge fiasco?
Yes, the maps are much better. They're not that bad. I mean, that was.
You know what? And real quickly, I can't let you go without talking about the ruling that came down regarding the ebook pricing.
Right. The final ruling. It's
final
been going
ruling.
on.
And whether there was a conspiracy there, and Apple lost in that trial. What was the ruling that came down regarding its penalty?
The penalty is a little better than was initially asked for by the Department of Justice, and so everybody got pained a little bit, and everybody got stuff taken away. But it's Apple's going to appeal it, so we'll see where it goes from there.
All right. We will look forward to Tuesday's announcement from Apple as well. Kara, thank you. The America's Cup finals are starting this weekend amid scandal. Oracle Team USA received a penalty that's being called the harshest in the history of the event. The jury decided the team placed illegal weights in a catamaran. It docked the team 2 points, levied a $250,000 fine, and banned 3 members from the event. Now, Julian, you wrote a book about America's Cup. How unusual is this type of cheating, and what impact will it have on the race as a whole?
Well, this is the oldest trophy in international sports, 162 years old. Since the very first race, there has been drama, there's been intrigue, there have been allegations of spying, of stealing other people's secrets. So it's fraught with this sort of drama. I think to actually call it cheating at this level, I would say it was a really dumb thing that a few guys at the Oracle racing team did. And I would say it was also a really draconian punishment. It was like, taking a bag of M&Ms and you get a 20-year sentence. It was bad. What they did was wrong. But it was, 4 people really in a team of 130 people. So that's about 2% of their workforce. And I think in much of corporate America, you'd be really happy if you had, that tiny figure in terms of people who were, messing up, screwing up, doing something blatantly wrong. So, it was a harsh penalty.
But but the jury,
$250,000 was a big deal. Taking Jimmy Spadil, he's the skipper for Oracle Racing. Taking his wingman off the boat. One of the most respected sailors, Dirk de Ritter, in sailing, veteran guy. What they did is they put these 3.5 pound to 5 pound weights in a forward pole, a king pole, which sailors call a dolphin striker, which is a very politically incorrect term. And they put these weights there. And
how does that change the performance of the boat? And we should say that this was during
Incrementally, if
warm-ups.
at
It
all.
wasn't during an actual race.
If they can shave a second off, these are fast boats.
Yeah, these are super fast boats, incrementally. So it was a really dumb thing to do. But I would say if they were actually going to set out to cheat, they would have done something much more effective, because it was such a incremental, if at all.
So they could have cheated better, like you're saying, essentially.
Well,
But the jury,
if you're going to go that direction.
The thing is, it's Larry Ellison, and he's
Yeah.
on the San Francisco, so that's really kind of the thing you've got going here. Is
Well, I
he's
also
made a big deal of this and caused a lot of attention.
well, speaking of Larry Ellison, I mean, you're writing a profile of
Yeah, I
Larry
am.
Ellison, and so did you talk to him about at all
No, I
about
haven't talked
any of
about
this
this yet. I'm sure he has an excellent explanation.
Well, but
he
he really, he wants to play, and he wants to play ethically. He's and people will be disbelieving at that statement. He is fiercely competitive. He wants to win, but not at all costs. He, of course, would think this was a colossal screw up. Dumb. Again, draconian punishment.
But I mean, the punishment is because it's Larry, because he's made.
It
you
is,
know what I mean?
but
They
there's
can't
also-
look like they're
yeah.
creatures of Larry Ellison here at this thing.
But
And so that's probably
there's a
one
lot of
tougher.
behind the scenes things going on with this international jury.
Mm-hmm.
So for one thing, there is a New Zealander who was on that jury who many people think should have recused himself, or the International Sailing Federation should have asked. I mean, New Zealand is the team that is up against the Americans. There's no American juror.
This is America's
on
Cup. This
this.
Okay,
happens
so-
every-
It is. So everybody's taking pot shots at the team.
Yes.
They did do something stupid, so they opened themselves up to it in a way. But there's a lot of amazing stuff that is going on.
The scandals
boats-
in the past. That's right. Let's talk about the race. What's
So,
going on now?
The finals start tomorrow. And it's a showdown on the water between Oracle, the defender, which won. Larry Ellison fought for 10 years to try to win the America's Cup, won in 2010, and brought it back to America for the first time in 15 years. Created these space-age flying machines on the water, the AC-72 catamarans that go 50, 52 miles per hour.
Which we're not going to see again.
Which we won't see again.
Because they're
And
going to be much cheaper and less dramatic.
well,
it's-
it's all relative.
And
This is, this is about $100 million venture.
Oh, sure.
Each syndicate is spending between $80 and $100 million.
And it's
So-
Team Oracle against the Emirates Team New Zealand. And just real quickly, talk about the economics of this. I mean, at one point it was estimated that it would bring in a lot of money to the city. Obviously, it's bringing in some money, but not anywhere nearly what anyone thought it would.
Well, it's not so bad. The original estimate was around 1.2 billion that it would bring in. The most recent estimate is around 900 million in revenue to the city. So it's still a great boon to the city. It's a huge amount of money. And at the end of the day, we'll see. People, should keep an open mind. The races are going to be pretty cool to watch.
All right,
Beautiful weather.
We will
Yeah.
keep an eye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, last week, an annual rite of artistic passage for many in the Bay Area took place, the Burning Man Festival. It got its start on a San Francisco beach in 1986 and has since become the largest outdoor art festival in North America, one that has inspired and been inspired by Bay Area artists. Every year, thousands of artists make the trek to Nevada to display their work in one of the most extreme environments imaginable. For 1 week, 5 square miles of the Black Rock Desert is transformed into a more than 300-piece exhibition of radical self-expression.
It is like the greatest museum ever. You have your piece there, you don't see any other pieces around it, and you see this vastness of the desert. Being able to see the change in scale from something from a distance and then being able to get right up to it and climb on top of it and actually touch it is amazing.
Core to Burning Man culture is its non-commercial nature. Nothing's for sale here. It's purely art for art's sake. Many of the Desert Playa's most awe-inspiring pieces are no temporal flights of fancy. Structures like these require months of painstaking and carefully planned design, most of which happens in the place where Burning Man got its start, the San Francisco Bay Area.
There's definitely a community of artists that I'm not sure would exist, at least not in this form, without Burning Man. And it's become a mecca for people to come here and be part of this scene.
A prime example, the Box Shop Artist Collective in San Francisco, a hub of creative innovation year-round.
Tell me about what we're looking at here.
This is all steel. It's disassembled at the moment, but all these pieces fit together on the structure.
Its main tenants are a female-driven group who collaborate on jaw-dropping kinetic sculptures for Burning Man.
Flaming Low Skulls is a group of 200 individuals, and we make art together. We teach people, particularly women, how to do all parts of the art-making process through this one big group sculpture. If you can get into it, you could never leave. It's addictive.
Part of that addiction, a decade-long fascination with fire and designs that push the limits of interactive mechanical art.
One thing that we believe in is making immersive environments. You actually walk into and become part of the art.
This year, they're crafting one of their most ambitious pieces yet. Xylophage is a giant tree stump with enormous mushrooms that spout fire and sound effects. While programmers work on the wiring and triggers for those mushrooms, Sue Kamek is finishing up the casings for all those sensitive electronics.
This will be a controller for our large fire mushrooms, and so the audience can push a button and make the fire poof.
It takes hundreds of hours of volunteer labor to bring such an intricate design alive, and the people who donate their time come from every walk of life. Jackie Britton flew all the way from London to be a Flaming Lotus girl.
Right, what am I helping you with here?
We are making bark for big stumpy. So you start with a flat bit of metal, you bend it, you cut it like this.
Okay.
And then you smack it with a hammer. It's not massively dangerous, but
that's good to know that it's not massively dangerous.
You know what I mean?
Jackie's what the group affectionately calls a minion, ready to take on any task that's needed.
I think that's suitably barky.
Suitably barky. Hey, you know what? 2 down, 100,000 more to go.
1 week later, Xylophage makes its debut at Burning Man.
You kind of have an idea of what it's going to look like, but it always turns out different, and it's really the road there and creating something a lot of other people are going to enjoy.
Like the Burning Man himself, much of the art here goes up in smoke at the end of the week. But over the past decade, the influence of Burning Man has spread, as an increasing number of these sculptures are finding new homes in urban settings. As executive director of the Black Rock Arts Foundation, Tomas McCabe helps fund community-based interactive art projects, all with the Burning Man aesthetic, like Futures Past by Kate Rautenbusch.
Futures Past is obviously like a Mayan temple. This is all modeled after actual circuit boards and circuitry.
The foundation's first project was a David Best temple in Hayes Valley.
We set up the temple and people started writing on it, and in the beginning police would stop people from vandalizing, and we had to actually enculturate the police and the local residents. Well, that's what it's for.
The Black Rock Arts Foundation has been building on the success of the Hayes Valley site. Over the past 8 years, it's supported more than 30 civic arts projects in the Bay Area and beyond. One of the best known is Bliss Dance on Treasure Island.
There's an iPhone app where you have a photo of the sculpture on your phone, and you can slide your finger up and down the sculpture, and the lights will change according to which colors you select. Marco Cochran has been working for years with life-size bronzes, and he's taken this classical form to a whole nother level of scale and technology.
Art that needs viewer participation to come alive is taken to the extreme with Peter Hudson's whimsical zoetrope. It requires passersby to pound on drums to make the piece spin. In 2008, it landed next to a children's museum in San Jose. Palo Alto will soon be home to artist Charlie Gadigan's Aurora, a piece he's shown at multiple festivals across the country and is readying to install outside City Hall.
This will have technology that the city can use to change the lights according to energy usage or the weather or whatever the city wants to do.
The Black Rock Arts Foundation is not the sole champion of Burning Man artists.
I think the biggest example of Burning Man art really making it into the mainstream is Leo Villarreal's Bay Lights. So he took a bridge that was nearly 2 miles long and created an entire LED art piece on that bridge.
The installation was privately financed to the tune of $8 million. Donors included Yahoo CEO Marissa Mayer, among a new crop of Silicon Valley patrons of technology-based interactive art. And soon, pending final approval by the city, the San Francisco waterfront will boast yet another former Burning Man creation, this one courtesy of the Flaming Lotus Girls.
We've been very successful in this kind of couple-year cycle where we'll make the piece for Burning Man, we'll break it at Burning Man, and then bring it back and work on it and make it perfect. But definitely Burning Man for Flaming Lotus Girls, at least, is where we were born. And so that is a special place for us.
Cool stuff. Our Arts Focus continues next week. Please be sure to join us for our Fall Arts Preview with Cy Musiker of the KQED radio program, The Do List. And I want to thank all of my guests for being here tonight. And a quick program note, next week will be the final broadcast of This Week in Northern California and the conclusion of our 24th season. Please visit kqed.org/newsroom for more information about a new program that I'll be hosting beginning October 18th. We close tonight with footage of the newly opened eastern span of the Bay Bridge. Enjoy. I'm Thuy Vu. Good night.
Major funding for arts programming on This Week in Northern California is provided by Diane B. Wilsey. Additional funding comes from the George Frederick Jewett Foundation, Helen Sarah Steyer, and Gretchen Kimball.